And the Council on Foreign Relations in the United States says it's healthy to see South Africa emerge from a state of limbo with the election of President Cyril Ramaphosa. Well, it praised the people of the country and the ANC for acknowledging the country's problems and expressing themselves in light of them. Well, our correspondent Sherwin Bryce-Pease has this interview from New York.
Michelle Gavin is a former ambassador to Botswana, a former U.S. representative to the Southern African Development Community, and a current senior fellow on Africa at the Council on Foreign Relations here in New York. Ambassador, thank you for this. What's your reaction to the installation now of Cyril Ramaphosa as the new president of South Africa?
Well, I think it's exciting to see a new day and some new leadership for South Africa, healthy for the country not to linger in this sort of limbo state where it was clear the transition was coming, but not exactly clear how it would be executed or in what time frame.
Now, having been a representative to the region, representing the United States in Botswana and at SADC, what were your impressions of the administration of President Jacob Zuma?
Well, I think anyone paying any attention to South Africa was dismayed and concerned, particularly about the revelations that have been ongoing regarding corruption and state capture. And so, while of course it's up to the people of South Africa to choose their leadership, I think all around the world, including in the United States, we can all recognize how insidious corruption is. It makes it very difficult to pursue an agenda on any of our shared interests. So I think it's encouraging to see the South African people express themselves about these issues, to see the ANC acknowledge the problems, and exciting to see where the country will go from here.
The ANC itself has been criticized for moving so slowly on this issue. Was that your impression, that this was perhaps a very slow-moving train when action perhaps was required at a much faster rate?
I think it's always difficult, particularly to deal with internal problems and internal politics. Yes, everyone would like to see the kinds of problems that have come to light nipped in the bud, not allowed to fester and grow and chip away at the integrity of institutions. But it's also a reality that these are politically very difficult issues to handle.
Does everything change with the election of a new president now? I mean, what's your sense on the road ahead for South Africa under Cyril Ramaphosa?
Sure. Well, no, one man can't change everything, no matter how gifted a leader. So it takes time, right? And it will take time to unravel some of the infections within the system. It will take time, I'm sure, to regain the trust of people. But what we've seen in South Africa is the very strong institutions, the strongly independent judiciary, a civil society that won't be pushed around. And so I think those are some really powerful indicators that it's certainly possible to turn this around and get the country moving in a positive direction again.
Do you foresee wholesale change in terms of the cabinet that Cyril Ramaphosa will now appoint? What do you expect him to do in the days ahead?
Well, given the nature of the leadership slate as a whole, there might be some, I would guess, careful and tactical sailing ahead, right? That maybe won't look dramatic, perhaps, right away. But I certainly think that change can be expected, and that there's some very capable and canny leadership that should be able to execute on the commitment to South Africa's people.
Let me ask you a final question. You served in the administration of President Barack Obama. We have a new administration here. How do you characterize the current relationship between the United States and South Africa, given that it has been quite fractured, certainly under the predecessor, Jacob Zuma?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say that regardless of our respective national leaders, it's always been an important relationship. It's important to the United States. It should be important to South Africa. The Trump administration has been off to a very slow start in terms of even staffing the State Department and our embassies. And I think that in many cases, a number of issues have been allowed to pile up and not be addressed, and perhaps the signals that have been sent have not been the most constructive ones. But there's nothing to do but try and get it right from here forward.
Ambassador, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Ambassador Michelle Gavin is a senior fellow on Africa at the Council on Foreign Relations here in New York.